So just a comment first that before we start recording, we're talking about how I'm seeing and the change in our education system, not just secondary but primary education, because that's initially where a lot of change needs to happen today,
Yeah.
so that we can offer better solutions for secondary education. One of the things that excites me about our community is you have people showing up to the table that are not standing on their egos and saying, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me."
Yeah.
It's what can we do to grow everybody? So we've got ULM, we've got Tech that are not doing the infighting that we need the students coming here. We have the four, which from my perspective, the 4-year colleges saying, "Hey, we want what's best for our community, and if Delta is going to be the right path to handle this area, that's where we need to go with it." Am I seeing that pretty accurate?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, everybody's trying to get their own. And
Sure.
there's some things that
But there is good cooperation.
there is. There's definitely good cooperation. And things are changing in education in a big way. One, we had tried to push everybody to 4-year schools, and then we realized, like, hey, not everybody, that's not meant for everybody. And we need some people who do these other things.
Sure.
So they started, as the wages started changing for those technical programs, parents are starting to realize, like, hey, man, that's cost me a lot to get this plumber to come to me. Maybe I should tell my kid that he could do this, because this plumber's making more than I am.
Right.
So that's starting to really kind of change, because people, as they're having an electrician comes in and it costs a good amount of money to get that done for your house, you're like, well, maybe that's an option for my kid. So that is starting to change the attitude of parents, because you as a kid, you can say, it's up to the kid to figure that out, but they're heavily motivated by how their parents view things. So if their parents say, hey, you should consider going to this technical program. And we just recently, this past semester, had a parent, their kid had 25 in their ACT, but he had won the welding competition at a school, and the parent called me and said, man, I want to send my kid off to ULM, but he's really good at welding. I said, ma'am, like, if he's really good at welding, he can make this kind of money, and just kind of listed out what our local it was, what it is to go off somewhere, what you can make. And I was like, if he goes into that major, he's not guaranteed that in any way.
Right.
And so then having those conversations, used to they wouldn't have that conversation at all. Used to parents wouldn't have that conversation at all. Now they are, they're opening up to that, opening up to allow their kid to go to the 2-year route. And
well, how does that conversation get shifted from these kids understanding and the parents stop focusing so much on I've got to earn this much, and balance that with when you go to work full time, you're going to be at your job in waking hours, and most of the time more than you're going to be with your family.
yeah.
And the value of enjoying what you do has got to factor into that.
It does, but work is still work.
Yeah.
And you want people to enjoy what they're doing, and a lot of that is so much on just the environment that's created at the job.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
But I do think that is like, I think people or they're more hands-on inclined or more mechanically inclined. And sometimes we've encouraged those people to go into something that they don't really just love. They're just kind of doing.
Sure.
So I think I really want education to be to open it up to allow students to understand what they want to do, and then to go that way. But if you think about it, though, if you think about plumbing, not everybody just loves plumbing. But like, if I was to go into plumbing and I come to your house and I charge you $150 just to show up, I do love making a good living,
Sure.
So like I tell people, it's like, look, not every job is going to be just the most enjoyable thing you ever do. You make it be something that you can do, that you can provide for your family in a good way,
So how do we get, and I'm not looking for you to step on toes here at all, but in the primary education, how do we get the kids exposed to more so that they can understand that this is possible, because our society for so long has been about pushing the 4-year degree, or if you don't do the 4-year degree, you're nothing, or you're less than other people if you go into these other routes or don't get anything at all. How do we get the kids engaged earlier?
I mean, you know, like if you think about junior high, kids don't know anything but what their parents tell them and what their parents' attitude about things are. So, I mean, I think that shift is slowly happening with parents, but the parents have to be the one kind of driving that. You know, if your student says, hey, I want to go be a welder, if you say, no, you can't be a welder, then your kids are going to be thinking, oh, well, that's less than, you know. And it's not necessarily the kid's attitude that needs to change. It's the adult's attitudes that have to change.
But how do we take those parents that are not engaged? You know, there is a difference. The poverty gap that we have in our community is much larger than what it should be. And a lot of that is, not all of it, some of it we could say we could go back to the home life, because, you know, it's a generational thing. This is what I've always done. It's what I'll always be. But there has to be a component of that too, because if we're just relying on the parents to make that shift happen, how do we get the have-nots engaged?